Los Angeles was once known as the ultimate American dream factory. Endless sunshine, palm-lined boulevards, and the promise that anyone with talent and determination could become a star. But today, as tourism videos continue selling that fantasy, another reality exists that longtime residents know all too well, a dark truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. Locals now speak in hushed tones, sharing warnings about what's really happening behind the glamorous facade. Why are so many lifelong Angelenos abandoning what was once considered the entertainment capital of the world? What you're about to discover will make you question everything you thought you knew about this iconic destination that the world continues to idolize in perfectly edited photographs and carefully crafted media narratives. The average visitor never notices. They arrive dazzled by Instagram-perfect shots of the Hollywood sign, promises of celebrity sightings, and the illusion of endless opportunity. They book their dream vacation months in advance, packing sunglasses and maps to the stars' homes, completely oblivious to what's actually happening beneath the glittering surface of this sprawling metropolis. They come looking for the Los Angeles of the movies, says Michael Reynolds, a former film industry veteran who worked 35 years in Hollywood before walking away. That Los Angeles doesn't exist anymore. It vanished long ago, and what remains is just a shiny facade hiding an increasingly troubling reality for those of us who live here permanently. The transformation began subtly, almost imperceptible to occasional visitors or newcomers blinded by the city's mythological status. In the 70s and 80s, when Los Angeles solidified its global reputation, the city maintained a delicate balance between development and livability. Middle-class families could still afford homes within reasonable commuting distance to work. The film industry provided stable, unionized jobs that supported thousands of households. The beaches, though increasingly crowded, remained accessible public spaces where locals and tourists coexisted. Traffic, while never ideal, still allowed reasonable movement across the vast urban landscape. Los Angeles seemed to be delivering on at least part of its promise as a sun-soaked land of opportunity. I bought my first house in Culver City in 1982 for $110,000 on a teacher's salary, recalls Barbara Martinez, who taught in public schools for 37 years. The same house just sold for $1.8 million. No teacher today could dream of buying it. This simple fact has completely changed who can live here and what this city represents. Barbara's observation touches on what many long-term residents describe as the greatest transformation. Los Angeles has become a city where the middle class is being systematically eliminated, creating a stark divide between extreme wealth and significant poverty. Everything changed with the new millennium and the explosion of housing costs driven by speculation, tech money, and foreign investment. Modest neighborhoods were transformed by aggressive gentrification that pushed out multi-generational residents. The entertainment industry, once a reliable employer with union protections, increasingly shifted to a gig economy model with precarious employment and diminished benefits. Wealth inequality reached staggering proportions, with homeless encampments growing in the shadows of luxury developments, where investment properties often sat empty. By 2015, Los Angeles had evolved into something longtime residents barely recognized. A paradise reserved almost exclusively for the very wealthy, or those willing to accept increasingly compromised living standards. The first warning sign was when entire communities started disappearing, explains Dr. Sophia Washington, an urban sociologist who has documented neighborhood transitions for 2 decades. Historic areas with deep cultural roots were rapidly transformed, not through natural evolution, but through deliberate displacement. We're not talking about simple demographic shifts. We're talking about the wholesale removal of working-class and middle-class families who had built these neighborhoods over generations. What Dr. Washington was witnessing was the direct result of an urban development model prioritizing luxury housing and high-end retail while systematically eliminating affordable living options. The consequences manifested in increasingly visible ways. In 2016, homelessness began an unprecedented surge that has continued unabated. Encampments appeared not just in traditionally marginalized areas, but across the entire city, under freeway overpasses in affluent neighborhoods, along popular shopping districts, and in formerly middle-class suburbs. What makes Los Angeles unique is not that we have homelessness, many cities do, but that the contrast between extreme wealth and extreme poverty exists in such close proximity, observes Richard Chen, who runs a nonprofit providing services to unhoused residents. You can literally see a person sleeping in a tent while a $100 million mansion looms in the background on the hillside. This juxtaposition has become so normalized that Angelenos don't even see it anymore. The housing crisis represents just the most visible symptom of a deeper transformation. Los Angeles has evolved into what urban planners call a luxury city, one designed primarily as a playground for the wealthy rather than a functional urban environment for residents across economic spectrums. We've created a situation where teachers, firefighters, nurses, and countless other essential workers cannot afford to live anywhere near where they work, explains urban planning professor David Williams. This means punishing commutes of 2 or even 3 hours each way, which deteriorates quality of life, increases pollution, and destroys the concept of community. A city cannot function long-term when its essential workforce is priced out. The environmental toll of this model has become increasingly undeniable, despite rarely featuring in tourism promotions. Los Angeles, despite significant improvements since the worst days of the 1970s and 80s, continues to suffer from some of the nation's worst air quality. The American Lung Association consistently ranks the Los Angeles-Long Beach area among the most polluted regions in America for ozone and year-round particle pollution. Many visitors experience scratchy throats or unusual fatigue during their stays, but attribute it to jet lag or air conditioning, notes Dr. Elena Fernandez, pulmonologist. What they're actually experiencing is the physical impact of our compromised air quality, which takes a much greater toll on permanent residents, especially children and the elderly. Climate change has exacerbated these challenges, with Los Angeles experiencing increasingly severe heat waves in a city largely designed around air conditioning. We've created an urban heat island where temperatures in concrete-dominated neighborhoods can be 15 degrees hotter than in areas with adequate tree cover, explains environmental justice advocate Marcus Johnson. And guess which neighborhoods have the fewest trees and most concrete? Invariably, it's lower-income communities of color, creating a direct correlation between wealth, race, and exposure to dangerous heat. Recent studies show that tree canopy in Los Angeles corresponds almost perfectly with income levels, creating literal shade inequity in a city famous for its punishing sun. Water security represents another looming crisis rarely acknowledged in the city's carefully cultivated image. Los Angeles exists in a desert environment and imports approximately 85% of its water from increasingly stressed sources hundreds of miles away. Climate change and population growth in western states have placed unprecedented strain on the Colorado River and other water sources Los Angeles depends upon. Most Angelenos have no idea how precarious our water situation truly is, warns hydrologist Dr. Sarah Nguyen. We've built a city of 4 million people in a location that naturally could support perhaps a tenth of that population. Our entire existence depends on massive infrastructure that's increasingly vulnerable to both aging and climate disruption. The city's relationship with natural disasters has also transformed. While earthquakes remain the most well-known threat, wildfires have become an annual crisis of growing intensity. When I moved here in the 1990s, serious wildfires were notable events that happened every few years, remembers firefighter James Morales. Now, we essentially have a fire season that stretches nearly year-round, with blazes of unprecedented scale and intensity. The boundary between urban areas and wildfire zones has blurred as development pushed deeper into fire-prone hillsides, putting more communities at risk. Insurance companies have responded by dramatically increasing rates or simply refusing coverage in many areas, creating another financial strain forcing residents out. Transportation in Los Angeles presents a paradox rarely understood by visitors. Despite massive investment in public transit expansion over recent decades, including new subway and light rail lines, Los Angeles remains overwhelmingly dependent on automobiles. We've spent billions on public transportation that most middle-class and affluent residents simply don't use, observes transportation analyst Jennifer Park. Our system predominantly serves lower-income residents while failing to create the comprehensive network necessary to reduce car dependency. Meanwhile, traffic congestion continues worsening to the point where a 5-mile trip can routinely take 45 minutes. The psychological impact of these combined stressors has created what some mental health professionals describe as Los Angeles fatigue syndrome, a condition characterized by constant low-grade stress, financial anxiety, and the cognitive dissonance of living in a place globally marketed as paradise while experiencing daily challenges that contradict this narrative. I see patients who feel gaslit by the disconnect between their lived experience and the way their city is portrayed, explains psychologist Dr. Rachel Goldman. They wonder if they're the problem, if their inability to make it in Los Angeles reflects personal failure rather than systemic issues. This creates profound psychological strain. For the entertainment industry, the economic and cultural engine historically driving Los Angeles, the transformation has been particularly dramatic. Hollywood itself has become a strange simulacrum, notes veteran production designer Thomas Winters. Actual film production has largely fled to other states and countries due to costs and tax incentives. The physical places tourists visit, the Walk of Fame, the Hollywood sign, have almost nothing to do with the actual business of entertainment anymore. Even the major studios have become primarily intellectual property managers rather than film producers in the traditional sense. The industry's economic model has fundamentally changed, with profound implications for the thousands who came to Los Angeles pursuing entertainment careers. In the past, you could work your way up through unions in technical positions, earning a solid middle-class living even if you never became a star, explains Maria Gutierrez, a costume designer with 25 years of experience. Today, those pathways have largely disappeared. We've created a barbell economy with a few extremely wealthy players at the top and masses of people working for free or nearly free as content creators hoping to be discovered. The middle has collapsed. Crime statistics in Los Angeles tell a complex story that contradicts both fearmongers and those who dismiss safety concerns. While violent crime rates remain significantly lower than their peaks in the early 1990s, certain categories of crime have risen sharply in recent years. What's changed most dramatically is not necessarily the volume of crime, but its geographic distribution, explains former police detective Samuel Wilson. Areas that were historically insulated from serious criminal activity are experiencing increases in property crime and some categories of violent crime. This creates a perception shift far more significant than raw statistics suggest. Property crime, particularly vehicle break-ins and package theft, has reached levels that many residents describe as epidemic. "My car has been broken into 4 times in the past year," says Emily Chen, a healthcare worker living in a middle-class neighborhood. Filing police reports feels pointless, as there's virtually no follow-up. It's become an accepted cost of living here. We budget for window replacements the way you might budget for oil changes. This normalization of property crime creates a pervasive sense of vulnerability that changes how residents interact with their environment, often avoiding certain areas or activities altogether. Public education, once a pathway to opportunity for countless Angelenos, presents another troubling indicator. The Los Angeles Unified School District, the nation's second largest, faces overwhelming challenges, including declining enrollment, budget constraints, and some of the nation's largest achievement gaps. We've created a multi-tiered system where affluent families either pay for private education or cluster in a handful of high-performing public schools, explains education advocate Robert Jackson. Meanwhile, schools serving lower-income communities often struggle with inadequate resources, high teacher turnover, and concentrated poverty among students. This educational stratification reinforces existing inequalities, creating what sociologists describe as opportunity hoarding. a process where advantaged families secure educational resources for their children while disadvantaged families face increasingly challenging conditions. The public education system in Los Angeles now often reinforces inequality rather than mitigating it, Jackson continues. This represents a profound shift from the historical role of urban public education as an equalizing force. Social atomization has intensified these challenges, with Los Angeles's famous car culture and sprawling geography creating natural barriers to community formation. The stereotype of Los Angeles as lacking community has some truth, but it's more complicated than outsiders realize, explains community organizer Gabriela Ramirez. Strong communities do exist here, particularly in immigrant neighborhoods and historically rooted areas. But these are precisely the communities most threatened by gentrification and displacement. When these networks shatter, they're nearly impossible to reconstitute in new locations. Despite these challenges, pockets of resistance and regeneration are emerging throughout the city. Neighborhood organizations fight to preserve affordable housing and cultural landmarks. Worker cooperatives create alternative economic models. Community land trusts remove properties from the speculative market to ensure permanent affordability. Urban farms transform vacant lots into food production spaces. Los Angeles has always contained multiple realities simultaneously, observes journalist Omar Wright, who has documented the city for 3 decades. Alongside these very real crises, you'll find remarkable examples of innovation, resilience, and community building that suggest possible alternative futures. Indigenous communities, whose ancestral presence long predates the city itself, are increasingly asserting leadership in imagining more sustainable urban models. Before Los Angeles was Los Angeles, this was Tongva land, reminds Julia Bogani, a Tongva cultural educator. Our ancestors sustained themselves here for thousands of years without depleting resources or creating extreme inequality. There are profound lessons in indigenous knowledge about how to live appropriately in this specific landscape, lessons the modern city has systematically ignored to its own detriment. Climate activists point to Los Angeles as both cautionary tale and potential laboratory for urban adaptation. The challenges Los Angeles faces today, water scarcity, extreme heat, fire risk, social inequality, are precisely the challenges many global cities will face in coming decades, notes environmental scientist Dr. William Chen. How Los Angeles responds, whether through technological innovation, social reorganization, or managed retreat from unsustainable development patterns, could provide crucial precedents for urban adaptation globally. The true tragedy of Los Angeles is not just what has been lost, but what could have been. With adequate planning and long-term vision, this extraordinarily blessed location could have developed in ways that preserved its natural gifts while generating broadly shared prosperity. Instead, short-term profit maximization and inadequate oversight created an unsustainable model now threatening to collapse under its own contradictions. I still love my city, confesses Michael, the former film industry veteran, while watching the sunset from Griffith Observatory. But it breaks my heart to see what it's becoming. Tourists come and go, taking perfectly framed photographs that carefully avoid showing the homelessness, the congestion, the struggling neighborhoods. We're the ones who live with the consequences year-round. Empty promises, broken dreams, fractured communities. Perhaps there's still hope for Los Angeles. Maybe it's not too late to reclaim something of what's been lost and build a new model that honors both the extraordinary natural setting and the dignity of all who call this place home. The first step is acknowledging the uncomfortable truth. The paradise promised in tourism videos is rapidly disappearing, and only deliberate intervention can save it. If you've experienced these changes or have stories about the real Los Angeles, share them in the comments. And if you found this analysis revealing, subscribe. The next report might expose what's happening in other destinations following the same destructive model that's transforming paradises into ecological and social nightmares.